Welcome to Thursday. You are looking live on a Thursday. This is Silicon Slopes. We are live with you. Today's show is brought to you by the Masters of Business Creation at the University of Utah. Do you want help growing a startup company? Enroll in the Masters of Business Creation program at the University of Utah's David Medical School of Business, a top-ranked school for entrepreneurship. It's available online or in person and mixes practical support with the professional degree program. Learn more and apply to the Masters of Business Creation at eccles.utah.edu/MBC. I tried to read that fast. I don't know why. We love the Masters of Business Creation in the University of Utah, but we did. Garrett's here. He had a late night playing poker.
I did. 3 a.m.
Tell everyone how you did.
Came in third after going all in on a 5-8 not suited.
Okay, so you're bad at poker. We learned that.
Third out of like 12. So at least I got my money back.
We have Kimball. Introduce our guest.
Kimball Kjar. One of my favorite people to talk to. He's been on various Silicon Slope shows. He's the CEO and co-founder of the Utah Warriors rugby team. When you're in school, first day of school, how did your teachers pronounce your last name?
I've heard just about every pronunciation. It's been Kjar, Kjar, all sorts of just butchered names. But, you know, the irony is that my kids actually now go to Corner Canyon High School, and the head football coach is a guy by the name of Eric Kjar. And so same exact spelling. We're not related. Don't know how that happened. Whatever. Point is my kids fortunately haven't had to grow up with the butchered pronunciation because everyone knows who Eric Kjar is at
good.
Corner Canyon High School.
That's
so,
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Year 7, right?
Year 7.
Of the Utah Warriors rugby, which is part of Major League Rugby, which is a startup league on its own, right?
Yeah. Challenger sport inside of America's most competitive or the world's most competitive sports and entertainment marketplace of the United States. And, you know, the league has gone from 7 to we're now at 13 teams, 12 teams. And, you know, there's future growth on the horizon as well. So it's pretty exciting just where it's gone just in 7 years. It's still a little bit, if I'm being candid, a little bit under the radar. But that's fine. You know, we're just still hustling and grinding and making sure, just like any startup, that, you know, we make our inroads where we need to.
Yeah. You've been to a game, right, Clint?
Oh, my gosh. I've been to a game. These games are nuts, dude. Like, I highly recommend everyone come to these things. Like, this is pure athleticism and raw masculinity on display.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can describe it. It is crazy. I've been to what? I think I've been to like 4 or 5 games. I still don't know that I know the rules.
I've been a part of the sport for 20 some odd years, and I'm still learning stuff every day. And that's you know, that's the beautiful chaos, I think, is what I saw something post about rugby, you know, recently, is that, you know, there's obviously rules and there's stuff that you can and can't do, but just the physicality and the aggression and the constant flow of the sport, it's something that you just can't replicate in other sports here with soccer or basketball even. But there is the unique thing, and I think this is probably something that, you know, you may have experienced, Clint. You know, 99% of the people that come to a game for the first time that have maybe never gone to a Warriors game or to a rugby game, period, they typically end up saying, I didn't really know what the hell was going on, but I loved it.
Oh, I love it.
Because they recognize a lot of the same stuff that they enjoy watching, which is, you know, American football with the physicality, you know, maybe even, dare I say, some of the MMA, you know, mixed martial arts stuff.
Yeah.
You got the constant flow and action of soccer, just nonstop. You've got the spatial awareness and hand-eye coordination that you see in basketball. So it's a lot of the same stuff that people might be familiar with, but they just don't quite know the rules. And that's okay. That's our job as, you know, entertainers, to help educate them on that. And that's what we try to do at the games. But 9 times out of 10, people come to the games and they say, I may not have necessarily known what was going on, but it was sure fun.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Rugby's huge in other places.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's huge in Ireland. Is it huge, like, in Europe? It's definitely huge in,
the way that I would say it's it's a Commonwealth sport. So all the Commonwealth countries typically have had rugby, cricket, soccer as part of their, core sports. And rugby's right there. So all through Europe, even into France. France is actually one of the most commercially successful countries with the sport of rugby. Believe it or not, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, the Pacific Islands, and then you'd even get up into Canada with them being a part of that. So it's kind of an interesting connection, but it all kind of stems from England and kind of the empire, all that sort of stuff. But,
so are you like a original franchise once the league was started?
Yeah, we're a founding team. There was 7 of us back in 2018 that decided to make the jump, and we didn't know where we were really going to land, just like most startups. Like, we didn't even know if we were going to be able to get through the first year or two. But then, quickly went from 7 teams to 9 teams in 2019, and then we just continued to grow from there. There's been some ups and downs, some teams that have come in and contracted. We lost New York and Toronto this last year, but we added Miami, Chicago, and a team in Carolina. So it's very similar, dare I say, history to what the MLS saw in their early days. But, hopefully we're on the tail end of that chaos and craziness. So we'll see where it goes.
And there's a TV deal, right? Like, isn't this broadcast on like national?
Yeah, we have a strategic partnership with Fox. So it's all of our national broadcast games, which is typically 2 games every weekend, is either on FS1 and FS2, and then the championship series is broadcast on parent Fox, the big Fox. But every team has all of their stuff locally broadcast. Our partnership locally is here with KMYU and KJazz, the Sinclair Broadcast Group. And then we also did some stuff before AT&T Sportsnet went under. We did some stuff with them last year.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing is we also have the MLR has its own OTT platform called the Rugby Network. So we broadcast all of our games there. So that's going to be that is available on Apple TV and Roku and all that sort of stuff. So people can watch all the local broadcast games on the Rugby Network, but the national broadcast games are on FS1 and FS2. So,
and it's international, right? I guarantee rugby games get more international viewers than other local sports.
We end up seeing about 40% of our viewership, our social media engagement, everything digitally is 40% international.
Yeah.
The unique thing about the MLR is and rugby here in North America is, I won't go too far down the rabbit hole, but forgive me here, but the U.S. and North America is sort of the last, the last frontier that rugby has yet to really fully conquer.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of these professional leagues, even some of the fans and the teams are really looking at the MLR and paying very close attention to how the MLR does, as it's kind of an indicator as to where the trajectory and the long-term growth of rugby internationally is going to go. Believe it or not, rugby's only been professional for a little bit more than 25 years. It's kind of interesting to note that it was amateur up until about 95, 96, but it turned professional back then, and it's still, because of that, kind of finding its feet as to how you commoditize the sport itself. And so they're really looking at the U.S. as this untapped market, but at the same time, kind of the first market that's truly privatizing the sport of rugby from a commercial and private equity perspective, investors, so on and so forth. So it's kind of interesting. We do get a lot of the international eyes on MLR because they want to see how this sport is going to take off here in the U.S.
Yeah. In a few ways, you have advantages, right? You're able to see what other sports leagues did over the last 100 or, MLS 20 years, pick up on the do's and don'ts. But the interesting thing, when I'm talking to folks internationally, I'll bring up rugby, right? Because it's a fairly common language once you're outside.
Yeah.
And they all know about Major League Rugby.
Yeah.
Which is way interesting for a little 7-year-old league. So you guys are doing something right internationally.
There's there's been our detractors. There's been folks that have kind of said, because we're doing something that's completely different. Like, this is the first professional league that is fully owned and operated and subsidized financially by private owners. Most professional rugby competitions are in some way, shape, or form subsidized or controlled wholly by the national governing entity. So imagine the NBA being owned by USA Basketball.
Oh, weird.
It's kind of it's really strange to kind of
Yeah.
think about, but that's how it's typically historically been done, is that the national teams and the national governing bodies own these professional clubs, and that's sort of their way to develop the players, bring them up, and then get them ready for the All Blacks or for England or for Ireland and the national level competitions. And so because of that, club and professional rugby has somewhat been second fiddle to that, whereas here in the U.S., it's the inverse. We do want to support and promote the national team. The Rugby World Cup is going to be coming to the U.S. in 2031. So we want the U.S. team to be successful, but at the same time, in order to do that, we have to be commercially viable and sustainable. And so being able to get that runway is always the battle on a day in and day out basis.
So is there such thing as like a Premier League? Like, you have Major League Soccer here in the United States, and then the Premier League's supposedly the best soccer league in the world. Is there something like that exists, or is this the only rugby league?
No, it is. So there's ironically called the Premiership in the UK, but that's just within England.
Okay.
There's another competition called the United Rugby Championship, which is all the Gaelic countries in South Africa. So they play in their competition. The most commercially successful professional league and probably the most competitive is what they call the top 14 in France. And they've just been wildly successful with their model. And their model probably is closer to the MLR model than anyone else's. Because of that, I think, I'm obviously a little bit biased. That's why they've been successful commercially as well as, on the field, being able to attract the top players. Their pathways are very strong and very significant. But, yeah, France has it. And then there's also another competition called Super Rugby, which is kind of the Southern Hemisphere and the Pacific Islands. So those are kind of the top ones, and we're sort of sitting in that fifth position of one of the top leagues in the world.
With the title of GM and CEO, when we first met, you walked into our office and just said, "Hey, I'd like to introduce myself and the team." And I didn't grow up playing rugby. I've never played rugby, but I did go to a game in South Africa and fell in love immediately. And I said, "Sweet, we're all in for whatever you need." And you guys actually did a lot of team meetings in our office.
Yeah.
Because you played in the field.
Yeah.
This is one of my favorite startup stories, right?
Yeah.
And it's been so fun to watch the growth, but a lot goes into it.
Yeah.
You've got to manage the players, you've got to manage the staff, and then get people in the stands and be the PR, be the marketing. How has your role changed from ramen noodle days to now when you guys are selling out and you've got like the stadium looks amazing, the hospitality is amazing, you've got like the corporate sponsorships, you can start to see like the evolution of it. How's your role changed?
It's changed a lot, but at the same time, it's, so I come from, part of the reason I was really familiar with what you guys are doing is I come from the high tech world. I come from, executive search and, contingency search stuff with the Bay Area high tech companies and, here in Utah. So, very familiar with Silicon Slopes. Obviously we had that relationship with old Jared Kirkwood and, that connection there. But, when we first started, I was the only full-time employee. We had some, contractors and other folks helping us with the commercial aspect. And then we ended up hiring, head coach and some assistant coaches. And, like I said at the outset, we didn't know if we were going to get through year one. We were just basically saying, let's just give this the heave-ho and see if we get into year two. And if we get into year two, it's kind of that proof of concept. Let's get an MVP. Let's figure out how we can make this somewhat tangible for someone to look at and say, yeah, I really want to get on board with this. From an investor perspective and so forth. And that's what we did, so we had to keep our budgets pretty narrow and thin. I call them the peanut butter years, peanut butter and jelly years, because, when the players were traveling, that's really all we could afford for team meals and stuff like that. But we had to really get creative and think, outside the box of like, how are we going to be able to practice and train? Because we don't own our own facility. We don't have the money to do our own facility. And that field right there in Lehigh by your guys' office, just, whoa.
Yep.
And then just right across the way was your guys' office. And I just randomly walked in and said, man, it's amazing. You guys have a little kind of meeting area, and it fit.
It kind of worked perfect.
It was like, it honestly was, because the guys could come there, they would meet. We weren't really, and we didn't overly conflict with a lot of your guys' schedules with what you guys were doing. And so it ended up being just an amazing partnership that we've really cherished. And I've got, 2 or 3 of sort of the early strategic partners that have stuck with us. Silicon Slopes is obviously one of those. Intermountain Health is another one, and a few others. But you guys have been, vital for us being able to get off the ground. And just even that one thing of us being able to do our team meetings, do our stuff, and then be able to just walk right across the street and then have the players go to practice was a game changer for us to be able to get through those first couple of years.
Yeah. Those are fun times.
Yeah.
How do you recruit players?
We've got a lot of local folks. So we do, our priority is to really focus on pathway development and local development. There's, rugby. I think some people here in Utah are somewhat familiar with it, but they'll be surprised to know that, pound for pound, Utah is probably one of the biggest states for rugby here in the United States. High school level, you've always had that Highland rugby, Larry Gelwick's history that people are all, I think, somewhat familiar with.
Did they make a movie about that one?
Forever Strong.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I think most people are familiar with. But then, you've had success with BYU, University of Utah. UVU has also been, pretty successful. Some of the men's clubs. But, because of, dare I say, our diverse expat community that does kind of reside here within the state because of whatever, it's because of the LDS community or the companies that are now bringing a lot of this international and national talent to the state of Utah. There's a lot of people that are familiar with rugby and are aware of rugby. See that with the Polynesian community, which is the second largest Polynesian community outside of Polynesia. You've got a pretty interesting combination. So we tend to really focus a lot on, local community development, bringing in guys. So we've got like our captain is, one of our captains is Paul Lasike, played at Highland, ended up going to BYU, played rugby and football at BYU, played in the NFL, came back to the Warriors in 2018, played well enough to then be able to get a contract in Europe, and now he's back with the Warriors. So there's guys like that have kind of come from this community that are pretty interesting stories. But outside of that, you're always going to need to bring in specific guys for specific positions that the U.S. sometimes has a bit of a hard time developing. So we use agents just like anything else. You'll build a network and relationship of agents. They're headhunters just like I used to be, so I'm kind of familiar with dealing with those knuckleheads. That's kind of another area and a backbone of what we do. We also, just continue to build relationships with players within the MLR, and we've traded and brought in folks from other teams. We brought in some guys from New England, Toronto, and New York because of some of the changes there with those teams. So it's an ongoing chess game, right?
Oh yeah. Can you make a living playing rugby? Like, is this the only thing that they do?
90% of them, yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
There's a few of them that, I would dare say they're seasonal workers. But, our top end guys are making a healthy living, enough to have it be their sole profession and occupation. But it's still at the level where, you've got some of these younger developmental guys that come in for the season. They're paid kind of a minimum contract. And, we help take care of them. We put them in some housing and some other stuff so they don't really have to worry about too much. They can just focus on playing. But during the off season, they'll have to, either go play in another competition like in the Southern Hemisphere, or, find some work elsewhere. So,
given what you said about like the rich history, and it kind of the bulk of it would be around Utah County. Move to Provo, man. I know the Harriman Stadium is awesome, but I think you'd sell out every game if you were in Provo. Don't you?
There's some interesting conversations that we've had with lots of folks along the Wasatch Front, all the way up from Farmington up at the Legacy Event Center.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool too.
Down here in Provo with some of the stuff that they're doing on the west side with that sports complex that they're putting in. So it's just a matter of figuring out where is going to be the best spot, for us long term. Because once you put down roots,
that's where you are.
That's where you are, and that's kind of what we found. With where we're at now is that, if we go back through our season ticket holder database, I'd say that 75-80% of the folks that are season ticket holders for the Warriors are within a 10 to 15 minute mile drive of the stadium out in Harriman. And that's just because we've been there for the last 6 years, right? So picking up and moving to Provo could be a good thing, but we'd have to really do some calculated, assessment long term.
Do you think you're in Harriman long term, or are you? It kind of sounds like you might be looking at.
We're looking. Yeah. I mean, the financial, the economics of professional sports it's kind of an interesting one. Very few professional sports teams make money, period. Even some of the NFL and NBA guys are still upside down. But because of just the economics of the asset appreciation year over year, they can afford to continue to write checks and be upside down from a P&L perspective every year. And it's
do you think any professional team makes money? I think the Jazz make like $300 million a year or something like that, and like just it's not a lot.
No, and the like for Ryan, it's a good investment because he bought it for $1.7 billion and change, or just I think slightly less than that. But I guarantee if he sold the team tomorrow, he could probably sell for $3 billion.
Yeah,
easy.
Isn't that crazy?
And they've probably, I don't know the numbers, but I guarantee they spent a healthy amount of money between, the 4 or 5 years that he's owned the team, however long it's been. But because of that asset appreciation, it's been a good investment for him, right? And so for us, it's kind of the same thing where we've got to look at that asset appreciation, how to best realize that. And, the numbers really just bear it out. You've got to be able to control your revenue streams from a facility, from food and beverage, from parking, from merchandise, from all those other things. Whereas, as a tenant within, the RSL ecosystem, like they're great partners. Don't get me wrong. Love John Kimball, love all those guys over at Real Salt Lake. They've been great partners for the Warriors from day one. But, they control those venues. Those are their venues, and they need to make money in those venues. And so because of that, we don't necessarily control our full financial destiny. So it's got to be, we just got to continue to kind of figure out, does it make sense to maybe do more games at like AFF where we can just get bigger crowds and be able to do, bigger things for us? Or is it, building and developing our own concept elsewhere? So those are a lot of the things that we're looking at right now, is to see how we can make that next leap. Right now we've only got 8 home games. So it's not a lot of opportunity to really commoditize.
Right.
So you've got to really get a lot of bang for your buck in those 8 games. Or we just got to do more games. That's the other thing. Right?
What if you did something with Steve Starks and the Miller Group and what they're doing over there in Daybreak with the Bees, building that stadium around the Bees? I think it'll fit, 10,000, maybe 12. I think they might be trying to expand it because they want the A's to play there for a season or two.
Yeah.
Either something over in the Daybreak area might be interesting, which actually wouldn't be a huge shift for you guys. That's pretty close.
Yeah.
Or even like I just saw a news story today that the taxpayers might be on the hook for $900 million for this stadium they're trying to build, the Major League Stadium in the west side of Salt Lake. Maybe there's an opportunity there.
Yeah.
Just say, hey, give us a few of those millions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, let's just call a spade a spade. The rugby and challenger sport MLR Warriors, we're still, perceptively not the 800-pound gorilla like the Jazz or, what the Larry H. Miller Group are trying to do with baseball. But, the unique thing about the sport itself is that, what we're trying to do, given Utah's history and its ability to promote and develop the sport at the grassroots level is we want to make Utah the epicenter of rugby for North America. And that's a bit of a bold statement when you kind of look at it in the big picture of things. But generally, like, because of some of that international connectivity to the state and just the sport itself, we have something pretty interesting. We got a dynamic opportunity to be able to make Utah, a big piece of the puzzle of this global game. And that it fits very much in line with what everyone's trying to do for the state of Utah here through sport or through entertainment, through the Olympics, through whatever, is that rugby, because of its, large fan base and player base and, it's being one of the largest sports in the world, we actually do have kind of a unique opportunity to really set Utah apart as a hub, if not the hub, of North American rugby. And so, for us, those types of conversations and partnerships would be key. But it's just trying to get past some of the perceptions still that rugby is young, infantile, and maybe, dare I say, minor league, which it's not.
Let's get Steve Starks out to a game. They're crazy. They're
the
incredible games.
Yeah, it'd be like buying Apple in 2008 versus now, right? Like, the party's over now, right? Like, the NBA, NFL, all of those are saturated. If you want to be the official partner of the urinals, that still might be available, but everything else is already gone. With rugby and the Warriors, you're able to get like a 7-year-old product that's still nascent, and you can grow with it.
Yeah.
It's always irritating when you and I are talking offline, and corporate partnerships and sponsorships are important.
Yep.
And I know the struggles, because we face those same things. Talk a little bit about how you guys view getting these partners on board and ultimately, like, selling the vision to them.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a pretty specific example. Like, we've been talking to, it kind of comes out in the story here. So we've been talking to Zions Bank from day one. Like, Rob Bruff's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. I love Rob and what they do at Zions Bank, but their name's on the stadium. This kind of goes back to the venue conversation. Like, we don't control the venue, and we don't collect the revenue because of that naming rights partnership. That goes into RSL's pocket, right? So Zions Bank, we've talked to them every year and had, partnership conversations, but we've never done anything with them because, truth be told, they've already got their name all over the stadium. That's what
literally on the stadium.
Yeah, they're paying for it.
Yeah.
They're investing in it. And, I don't blame them at all for, not doing anything with the Warriors. But we've had, a great conversation with a similarly young and hungry partner called CC Bank.
Mm-hmm.
And they caught the vision of what it is that we're doing. We've had great conversations with them, and they just came on as our exclusive banking partner this year. They're going to be doing some, like a new debit card and kind of a branded Warriors, card for people to be able to pick up and do some things. Very similar to what, a lot of, I think, AFCU has done with the Jazz or, whatever else. Stuff like that, right? But they're not a big bank. They've only got, like, I think 7 or 8 locations, but they're young and they're hungry and they're kind of a challenger financial institution within the marketplace.
Yeah.
So they're doing some stuff with us to really kind of get more out there. There's a power to sports that is kind of unique when you look at partnerships. Intermountain Health has been one of our big partners from day one. They just announced their partnership with RSL because they're expanding their footprint here. And they're utilizing sports to be able to get to a cross-section and a demographic that they haven't really had a lot of market penetration with in the Hispanic community. So for them, it makes all the sense in the world to be able to utilize that backbone of sports to be able to create trust and, opportunity for their business overall here within their own backyard. So it's huge. Sports is one of those deals where it's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, you guys are probably one of the only two that might do this, but I don't know that there's too many people that are getting tattoos of Silicon Slopes on their rear end.
I would never do that. Don't ever do that.
Too late for me.
But you see tons of people with Jazz,
Absolutely.
RSL tattoos, or maybe even a BYU tattoo here or there. There's maybe a couple of
I've
them,
seen one or two.
bouncing around.
It's the ultimate community.
It is.
Sports is the ultimate community because no matter, you might hate each other, you might have different political views, you work different careers, all this type of stuff. When you're at a Jazz game, you're all on the same team, right? Yeah. And so it's the ultimate community. I don't think anything even comes close to it, really.
Yeah. And so that is the power of sports from a brand association perspective. And, the Warriors, we've been able to do that pretty significantly, but it's continuing to grow and it's evolved. But, we definitely found a good niche for companies that really are wanting to kind of make their stake their claim and grow and be aggressive within the marketplace. So
I just want to call out the sponsor it's Capital Community Bank, right?
CC Bank.
Or is it just CC?
They go by CC Bank, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did they used to be Capital Community?
I don't know the full history.
Well,
yeah.
maybe
I'm
I
sorry.
just called out the wrong thing. CC Bank.
CC Bank. They're awesome.
Well done.
That's
they're
great.
awesome.
Yeah, when I went to a game with Clint, we were watching him warm up, and he's I think your words were like, it looks like they're playing patty cakes, but I would be on the other side of the field after one of those collisions, right? And you mentioned Paul Lasike, and I said, wait till the game starts. It's fun to watch people as they're taking their seats just look at the field like this, and they're looking at these gigantic men, and they kind of know that they're going to start running at full speed and smashing into each other. One quick rule / question. So the person's tackled, they're supposed to put the ball back towards their team, right?
Yeah.
You can, as the defensive guy, you've got to get off in a certain amount of time. But regardless, your teammate from the offensive side, let's say it's the Warriors, is going to smash that person.
Yeah.
And if they don't move enough, they're going to smash again.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they're raking with their feet, right?
Not supposed to.
Not supposed to.
Yeah, but that's kind of the one of those cheeky little things that ends up happening occasionally.
If you watch closely, it happens a little bit more than that.
Well, yeah. I'll just leave it there. Yes.
Yeah. So it is.
Our Utah Warriors guys have never ever done that.
Yeah.
But that's one of the funnest things. And then when the scrum happens, everyone's like, "What are they doing?"
Yeah.
And it's has anyone ever put like the pressure point of that like joint? It's got to be
the scrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know they have like the PSI and the pressure and all the stuff that's being heaved, especially on the two guys that play that middle position, oddly called the hooker. But the people that hook the ball back in the scrum, like that's where most of that force of 8 large human beings just pounding against each other in these scrums is pretty impressive. I don't know what it is. I'm just a little lowly scrum half that is one of the sprites on the in the back line. I played one game as a backup hooker when I was in college, and I swore that I would never do it again because my back and neck and everything ended up in all sorts of different directions.
It's a brutal sport. It's more intense than the NFL, and they don't wear any pads or helmets.
Yeah.
Well, and the constant flow of it is another thing. Like you've got these big, massive guys that are going, in some cases 7 to 8 miles in a game, of just consistent running. And then they've got to go and do these scrums, and those happen probably a dozen times a game. And that physically in and of itself, I mean, good grief. That's like,
so much.
Like putting 450 pounds on your back and trying to lift that, 12 times.
Yeah.
Just what that can do to guys sometimes is pretty intense. So just the amazing physical power, but also, the endurance that these guys have, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, for sure. And then you guys, the season is starting. We have a preseason game on Saturday.
Yep.
This Saturday?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, come on out.
San Diego Legion.
Yeah.
Legion of Boom. But it's at 2:00 at out in Harriman at the Zions Bank
Stadium. Yeah.
Most people don't have anything great going on at 2 p.m. on a Saturday.
If they do,
What a statement.
We know a lot of people, and we know they don't, so they should come to the Warriors game.
Yeah. Unless
They're not doing anything better than the Warriors game, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's a good opportunity. It's supposed to be in the 50s, and San Diego was in the final last year. They were actually the favorites in the MLR championship last year, and they ended up having a bit of a struggle against New England and lost that game. But they reloaded. They brought back some big guns, and it should be a good test to kind of see where we're at, where they're at ahead of when the season starts the following week, March 2nd.
And there's still sponsorships, corporate packages, season tickets, everything still available.
Yeah, the big thing for us is we're really pushing hard on the corporate hospitality. That's something that Zions Bank has candidly doesn't really have a lot of options. So we've actually gone in and retrofitted this big, massive tent that is really, really cool. I know you've been out to it, but it's a fun experience. We've got this new concept called Pass on the Pitch, kind of like an NBA sideline pass, where you're literally right there on the sideline next to the bench, and you just see the craziness of the impacts and the collisions and the aerial skills of these players and the lineouts. And it's probably one of the cooler experiences I think someone could have from a sports and entertainment perspective here in the state. And then you've got some other things, but you couple all of that with the corporate hospitality, the pass on the pitch stuff. If you're a company and you want to host someone to a pretty unique and fun experience, there's nothing better. I'm obviously biased, but
no,
it's
I agree.
cool.
I 100% agree. I don't think there's anything like it.
Oh.
I've never seen anything like it. I wasn't sure what to expect, and when I went, I was like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah.
I would literally die within 2 seconds of being that's how intense it is.
Yeah,
it's so crazy.
And to be clear, the pass on the pitch, it's not like your front row is still 20 yards away.
No, you're
from me to you.
Yeah, from me to Clint. Like I'm literally like, this is how far, like you're literally 4 to 5 meters from the sideline.
You're going to hear it and feel it, and it is amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Kimball, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it. This has been fun.
Thank you. And we will put the link for season tickets in the podcast after, so no reason not to go.
Go to the Warriors game this Saturday. UtahWarriors.com?
WarriorsRugby.com.
WarriorsRugby.com. Check it out. Okay, see everyone next week.